So, Emmanuel, welcome. Super cool to have you here.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, I'm pretty excited, because I think there's one thing that I always tell people about, just doing really well in business in general. And that one thing is like, if everyone is doing something, you should just like run away from that thing. And obviously, it's like a half truth, right? Like, obviously, Facebook's a great platform. But I always like to like think outside the box. And I think that's why I've done so well with native over the years. And I also just came in at the right time. But as a result of that, like I do have like some really, really good insights for people who want to learn about this traffic source. So whatever you want to achieve with an e-commerce store, it's definitely possible to achieve it with native. Doesn't mean it's the only platform where you can achieve that, but it's definitely possible to get to really crazy levels of spend and profits. The good thing about native is you can just scale at an incredible rate once you have something working. And I think that's really the biggest benefit that I've seen from running native. And because on Facebook, it's basically that's the difference between native and Facebook, right? Like on Facebook, it's more about like constantly finding winners. It works at lower scales for more specific markets, which is awesome. And obviously, the algorithm is always going to be better, right? Because it's like a multi-billion-dollar company. And native, on the other hand, it's more about finding the winner, right? Like it's hard to make something work, but when you actually get it to work, you can just get it at a crazy scale super fast. I mean, you can. Um, one of my first experiences ever of that craziness of the scale was, for those who don't know, back in the days I used to run a supplement business, and that's kind of how I got my big start on native. And my first experience with it was I had a working campaign that was making about 1K per day back at, which is already a lot of money, right? It was like spending 800 and it was making back like 1.6K. And then there were some costs and you basically was like kind of profitable, not that crazy. And then it was just capping out every day. It was just spending the budget, right? And then one day I managed to like secure the funds to spend more, and I just uncapped, right? Like I raised the budget to like the maximum you could raise it at. And the next day, that same campaign was spending, I think it spent like $6,000 and it made back like almost like well over 10K. Can't remember exactly what it was. And that was my first time where like I paused for a minute. I was like, holy crap, like this is really powerful. And just from that point, I've kind of always been addicted to it, because it's just so powerful. And then, so just to kind of like put an end to that story, so you guys know like where I'm coming from. Eventually, there were some new regulations in the supplement business that made it harder to advertise. And then not only new regulations, but also like native networks themselves started like not liking supplements as much. And so eventually I transitioned to selling my own e-commerce products on native. And I'm going to basically, I decided that I was going to promote like a specific product. I'll get into a few of the verticals that I've worked with. And I basically started selling it, and it was actually ended up it being even better than the supplement business because I had so much flexibility in what I was able to sell. And so just the first year of selling multitude of e-commerce products on native, that did like well over 3 million, close to 4 actually. And then that was last year, and then this year has been just as good. And the great thing about it too is it's very stable. So that's kind of like why I love native, because I don't know, like I'm a pretty stable guy. Like I like having my routines, and the thing, like I don't like waking up and having my campaigns just like all messed up, right? And with native, you just have it just keeps going, right? And obviously you have to adjust it and keep optimizing, but over time, performance does tend to stay constant. So yeah, those are the main benefits. I mean, again, like I don't want to be like completely biased, right? Like there's definitely some downsides. Like probably the biggest downside is there's a lot of verticals that are not adapted for native ads. So that's kind of like the first big downside. And then the second big downside is probably like especially now, it's kind of really difficult to get something to actually work, right? And so that's the one thing like all the native gurus will not tell you about is like they'll show you these crazy results. Like I can talk about all the crazy results I've had, but at the end of the day, like I've also had tons of failures because most of what you try on native is not going to work. Unlike Facebook, where like there's a wider number of things that can actually work. But then yeah, the pros is obviously the scale is incredible. And then once you have something to work, you don't really have to worry about scaling, right? Like to me, the word scaling is literally built into native. Native is scaling. Like there's no such thing as a good native ad campaign that doesn't scale. That literally does not exist.
Great. So we've talked a little bit about all those benefits and things like that, but I presume that, so we understand that there's this next kind of huge advertising channel that is stable, that is super scalable, that is, hard to get into, but once you do, you're basically light years ahead of everyone else. But some people may still be asking themselves, what the hell is native ads?
Yeah, you might not. Well, the one thing that I like to do in my marketing is first you want to like hype things up, right? Because like no one really cares what it is if they don't know what it's going to do for them, right? So yeah, great platform. Now, indeed, at this point, you might be wondering, what the hell is this like magical scale thing, So I'm actually going to show you because there's nothing that explains things better than seeing things in the real world. So I'm just going to show you what native ads are. And the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to share my screen. And then at some point, you're going to see it, hopefully, if everything works. Fingers crossed.
Yes, we can see it.
Fantastic. All right. So right now I'm just browsing on MSN, which I know you might think no one goes on MSN. It's actually a massively visited website. There's lots of people, especially in like older age groups, who go on MSN every day. And so let's say I'm just browsing on MSN and I don't know, I just see what could be something that, I wouldn't really read much of anything here. But let's just say, I don't know, I'm interested in this like Balkans thing, right? I don't know, like I read the article, blah, blah, blah. And first thing you can see is there's some ads here. Now, technically, it's not like right now, these ads are targeted for Poland because I'm currently in Poland. So right now I'm on the UK website. Typically what I would do in a presentation like this is I would put a VPN to UK to like show UK ads. In this case, I can't because it would break down the webinar. However, just imagine those are UK ads, right? But for example, you can see there's some ads that are going on around here. And then if I browse down, if it actually loads, because of course, the one time where I show it, it had to like not work. Okay, perfect. So those are also some of what we call native ads. Now, why do we call it native? We call it native because it's built into the website. Now, if we're being super technical and annoying, technically Facebook ads are native because it's integrated into the feed. But in internet marketing lingo, native ads are specifically ads like this that are on news websites. So if you hear someone talk about native ads, if it's like a brand person, then they're just referring to any kind of ads that is built into a platform, which kind of like most advertising, I suppose. But if you hear a performance marketer or an internet marketer talk about it, this is what they're talking about. So those are ads, and this is kind of the genius of what makes native so great is it's right next to the articles, right? So you can see here, those are actual articles that are on MSN. So if I open this article, it's MSN, right? However, this is an ad by Babel, which is actually one of the examples that I want to get into. So this is actually perfect.
They really blend in with the advertorial content, right?
What's up? Yeah, it blends in perfectly. That's the genius thing, right? Like, honestly, like it's people know it's an ad, right? Because it says ads. They're not stupid. However, the news website itself lends credibility to that ad because there's always this thought in the back of people's minds, like, if it's here, it can't be complete. It can't be bullshit, right? Because why would such a like MSN's owned by Microsoft, right? Like, why would Microsoft let some bullshit thing on their website? They wouldn't. And the truth is, it's extremely regulated. So immediately you have your brand on there, you have your store on there. Even if you don't necessarily have the greatest brand or store, there's already that credibility that's kind of like built in. And yeah, Babbel is actually an example of an app that massively, they've been abusing native ads for a really long time, a couple of years now. They actually used to be the biggest spenders for quite a while. I think now they slowed down a little bit because probably they have the whole market basically. And it's a language learning app, which is not a vertical that I've worked with, but I know some people have done very well. Anyway, so that's native ads. You can keep browsing. It goes until a certain point, and after that, it's only article. And you can kind of already see what kind of stuff is running, right? Like, you have to make your headline very appealing. And like, for example, want to learn Spanish in 2020, like super targeted, super boost Wi-Fi device takes Poland by storm. Like, there's definitely a clickbait element, we're not gonna lie here. Like, native ads are typically more clickbait than your average like ad network, definitely more clickbait than Facebook for sure. And yeah, apparently these VPN people are like spamming ads, which is pretty interesting. Anyways, so that's native ads. That's how it works. I think I've already shown some. Now the question is, how do I stop sharing my screen? Pause.
I can do it for you.
Oh, perfect. Okay. Fantastic.
Nice, perfect. So I mean, we know what it is, we know what it does. Now let's talk about how to actually make it work.
How to use it. So basically, I want to show you a couple of things. Give me a second. There's going to be a couple of things. So what I want to start with actually is I kind of want to show, like, I kind of want to explain, yes, people will be able to ask questions at the end. I want to show you, the first thing I'll do is I actually show you, I was actually thinking about first like explaining some stuff, but I actually think like showing things is going to have a lot better impact. So I'll actually go back to sharing my screen because I'll actually show like a proper like funnel this time. So what we're going to do here is I'll show you an actual e-commerce funnel that uses native ads to do super well. So those kinds of funnels are absolutely genius. And so what I'll do is I'll show you that first. I'll show you what it looks like on, at the front, what people can actually see. And then I'll show you how it actually plays out from the advertiser perspective, meaning how do you set it up and all this kind of stuff, right? So let's take this because those kind of things do super well. So super boost Wi-Fi device takes Poland by storm. This, so maybe you didn't see it for a second, we could see paid.outbrain.com. So this is provided by Outbrain. Now there's two big players in the native world and a couple of other minor ones. So the big player number one, they're the biggest, is called Taboola. And Taboola right now, I would argue, is probably one of the highest quality traffic sources on the internet. They have tons of super premium websites. They're super strict about what you can and can't run, which means the traffic quality is extremely high because you have big brands on there as well. And like my experience with Taboola is if you can be running on there, it's very difficult not to make money. Like you actually have to try not to make money in order not to make money. And the other one, now obviously the downside is it's a little bit more restrictive. So I can actually show you here, right? Those are like, this is Taboola. The other network is called Outbrain. Now, funny enough, a couple of years ago, Outbrain used to be what Taboola is now, meaning they were the high quality guys, very restrictive. And then about two years ago, maybe things kind of like flipped. And now Outbrain, they have a lot of traffic, especially in France, the US, and Brazil. Not as much in UK. However, Outbrain they allow more things to run, but their traffic quality is a little bit lower. So what that means is like you can be a little bit more aggressive. However, it takes more work to get a campaign to work. It takes more effort. You have to have great copy and a great funnel. But the upside is there's some things you can run on Outbrain that you couldn't on Taboola, such as anything related to anti-aging, like, looking younger, anything related to weight loss. You could not do it on Taboola. You can't do it on Outbrain, obviously within. And in general, health-related things do tend to be accepted on Outbrain a lot more than on Taboola. So that's kind of like the state of the union right now on native, and it's going to change. Now, there's some smaller ones. There's Rev Content, there's MGids, there's a couple of other ones. For e-commerce, it's mostly trash. Those networks are mostly used by scammy advertisers who sell like diet pills and trials and like money-making scams and all this stuff. So I recommend you don't even try it, because it's, for the most part, you're just gonna like waste your time and your money. So how does it work, right? What's the funnel like? So you start at first of all, what kind of things actually work on native? That's a really important point, which is kind of illustrated pretty well here. So native is a mainstream platform, right? That is the definition of native, which is why it scales so well. So what that means is, if your product, I'm always trying to like find what the actual percentage is. The current thing that I tell people is, if your product does not solve a problem that affects more than at least 15% of the population, it's probably not good for native. Or if it's not about solving a problem, if 15%, not 50, right? Like 15, 20% of the population cannot, if less than 15% of the population can't use your product, native is probably not going to be great for you. And the reason why is because we actually can't really do any targeting on native. Now, I know it sounds bad, but the native algorithm is also very smart. It can kind of like figure out what the user is more likely to want to buy or not buy. So technically, there's an algorithm that kind of does the targeting for you, and also your headline kind of does the targeting for you, right? For example, super boost Wi-Fi device takes Poland by storm. Like, if I'm not interested in boosting my Wi-Fi connection, I'm not going to click, right? So the targeting on native, funny enough, it's almost at the headline level that it happens. But the downside is, if you have a product that is more like on the specific side, and doesn't solve a problem that is relatively big, or doesn't offer a solution, or like a product or service that a lot of people would want, you're probably not better off going on there. Now, let's get specific on that. What does that mean exactly? Let me outline some examples of niches and products that historically have done well on native. So anything health related that affects a lot of people. So weight loss historically has always done great on native. The main issue being, can you actually get it approved? Anything related to anti-aging, looking younger, feeling younger, anything related to having more energy, right? Because it's mainstream. Anything related to pain, right? Like joint pain, back pain. I don't know what other kind of pain, but yeah, those are the two main ones: back pain and joint pain being the two big pain categories. You have, what are some good other examples? Anything related to hair loss, right? Which nowadays you have no chance of ever getting it approved, but it would work theoretically. Anything related to, what would be some other good examples? Actually, funny enough, anything related to dog and cat health. Because again, especially in the US, a lot of people have dogs, a lot of people have cats. So there's a lot of supplements for dogs and cats that do very well. And now this is just like health. And if we go on like e-commerce, anything about internet speeds, because obviously it affects like almost anyone. Anything about snoring actually is a good niche. And again, you can see the common theme here. I'm not bringing these examples to like, I'm not using specifics to like tell you should do this. I'm using these specifics to tell you like, this is the kind of things that work, right? And why do they work? Because it concerns a lot of people. You can see here, language learning, right? It's also a big market. You can see here like a VPN service, right? Like, again, it's going to affect a lot of people. There's a lot of games like a smartwatch. These things always do well. Right now in a lot of Western countries, there's like AC coolers that do really well, like air conditioning things. Why? Because everyone's hot, and in a lot of Western countries, there's no AC, like for example, in Germany or things like that. So those are like good examples. I think that gives people already a pretty good idea of what tends to work and not work. So anyways, now we can actually get into the example, but it was important to go through that first. So again, people see it, they're interested, they click on it. What happens now? Well, they get to what's called an advertorial. And this is kind of like the first big takeaway. Well, there's a lot of takeaways you should have had so far, hopefully, but this is one of the big takeaways you should have is like Shopify stores do not work on native ever. Like if you just avoid, like, and I see people doing it all the time. Like they reached out to me, they're like, hey, Emmanuel, I have this Shopify store. It's crushing it on Facebook. And then I launched that same like product page on native and spent whatever, $1,000, $2,000, $3,000, and we didn't make a single sale. Like, and then sometimes they're like mad, like, oh, like native's a scam. Like I knew it, blah, blah, blah. But the truth is what works on native is different than what works almost everywhere else. Now, why is that? Again, remember, where are these people coming from? They're coming from a news website. They're reading an article, and then they click on an ad. And if they're still in an article after clicking the ad, it's congruent, right? Like this is something called funnel, the congruence throughout your funnel congruence. And it's a very old principle used by that almost any good marketer would know. It's like wherever you're taking people from, whatever kind of ad you're using, whatever kind of image you're using in your ad should be congruent with where people go after they click, right? It's called the post-click experience. And in order to maximize that post-click experience on native, you have to keep them within that same news environment. So what these guys did here is very smart. This is a page that for Wi-Fi Booster, it's been running for years, that exact same page. Like they haven't even changed anything. It's pretty funny. Except the date actually, which you're not really supposed to do. But anyway, so this is an advertorial, right? It's a news article designed to sell a product. You can see it, they say it here. You're legally obligated to say advertorial at the top of an article that you use to sell a product. Like if you can't, if it's like a gray area, whether it's a paid article or a review article, you need to put advertorial at the top. So that's kind of like the legal aspect of it. But otherwise, you can see smart Wi-Fi repeater fixes slow Wi-Fi and boosts your home Wi-Fi speed instantly. There's even a mistake in the title, which is not ideal, but obviously it still works. And again, what's the approach here? What are they actually doing? It's newsworthy, right? It's genius. It's like clickbait kind of language because you got to keep their attention. That first headline of your advertorial is the key to basically the success of your whole funnel. And again, talking about post-click experience, ideally, one thing that I've seen done well is if you match the headline of your ad with the headline of your advertorial, which I guess they kind of do, but I would have liked to seen like take Poland by storm, for example, or something like that. Anyways, I'm not giving these guys a marketing lesson, so this is just to show you guys how it actually plays out. And then what is it? It's just a news article, right? Like it's basically telling the story of like how this editorial department is like reviewing this Wi-Fi booster, and then they find that it's amazing. They explain how it works. And again, why does this work so well? Because it's a third-party perspective. It's a lot more trustworthy. Like the biggest thing that I try to tell people is with online marketing right now in 2020, the biggest challenge is not making crazy claims. Anyone can make crazy claims. Like you're going to burn 20 pounds of fat. Like you're going to look amazing, blah, blah, blah. Anyone can make these claims, but very few people can actually prove that their claims are true. And this is why native works so well, because it looks like it's a news article that is endorsing. Actually, funny enough, they actually put the logo of the product here, which typically I wouldn't recommend. You actually don't have to do that. What I would like to see usually here is, for example, like a logo of a news website, you just invent your own news website, right? Like the best approach is you you buy a separate domain, you put a separate blog on that domain, and you could have, for example, like myinternetspeedreview.com, right? You buy that domain, myinternetspeedreview.com, And then you create a nice little logo for it. You create a blog with WordPress. You put all the stuff you need to put on there. And then you have your landing page, right? And then at the top, it's mywifi-speedreview.com, right? And then all of a sudden, it's not the founder of Superboost saying Superboost is awesome. It's the guy from myinternetspeedreview.com saying Superboost is awesome. And that's the difference between the first and the second example is like potentially like triple the conversions, just because of that third party feel.
Yeah,
So now
let
you
me
can
quickly
kind of
stop you for a
understand.
second because I wanted to stop here to talk
Go for
about
it.
this. Because some people may say that, hey, we're inventing our own news website. This is kind of weird and incongruent with what the brand may be representing. But actually, what I've been talking to one brand about recently is they wanted to expand the reach, right? They kind of felt like they were with their product related messaging, they were kind of reaching the broad audience, and it's a travel niche. They were pretty much exhausting their whole audience, right? So then we decided to actually start creating those Facebook pages related to some specific groups of travelers, right? And they started posting content like travel deals, things like that, something that is useful to their audience, right? And then basically you're adding value to your audience. Like if you're not feeling comfortable just creating the news website just to sell your own product, then actually think about how you can add value to your audience through some relevant content as well. And then from every now and then, if you believe in your product and you think it's adding value to your customers, it's perfectly fine to actually put an article that is talking about your product here, right?
Yeah, and I mean, there's two aspects to this, right? There's always two sort of concerns about this. The one you addressed is like the branding concern, which you addressed perfectly. But then there's also another concern, which is really weird to me, but something people bring up. So I'll bring it up now. They're like, but is this legal? And like my answer is always like, think about it from a first principles perspective. Is your business allowed to buy a separate domain? Yes. Are you allowed to create a news website on that domain? Absolutely. There's nothing preventing you from doing that. And then is your business allowed to promote your product on that news website? Absolutely. As long as you disclose it. The advertising regulations in most countries obligate you to put advertorial at the top of the page. So that's something to be careful about. You also have, again, it depends on the country, but for example, in the US, at the bottom of the page, you have to have a disclaimer. This is an advertisement and not an actual news article, blog, or consumer protection update. So you have to have those. You have to have the contact us, terms, conditions, privacy policy. If you're an affiliate, you have to disclose it. If basically there's a bunch of disclosures you have to make. And again, sometimes depending on the country, like if you have, for example, testimonial, you put a little star next to it, and at the bottom of the page, you say like, those are just example. I can't remember it depends. Again, it depends on the country as well. But you basically say like, those results are just examples, and they're not guarantee of future results you could get or something like that. But from a legal perspective, it's super super clean basically. So that's the yeah, I guess that's like the legal aspect, and then the branding aspect. Then again, like I would say it's actually even better with a news article because you're having this like third party source endorsing your brand, saying your brand is great. Like, who do you trust more? Like the example I always take, I've used this example a million times and I'll use it another million times, is let's say you have two single guys, and they both want to be with like one specific girl, right? And one single guy, they're both like in a bar environment. One single guy just walks up to that girl and he starts talking about how great he is. Like, he's like, oh, like I have this great job. Like, look how handsome I am. Like he just like vouts his own merit, right? And then, like whatever, he takes that girl's number. And then a couple minutes later, there's a girl, like a girlfriend of that girl, who meets up with her because they were supposed to meet up. And then that girl tells her like, hey, like I know about this amazing guy. He's such a nice guy. He's like, he has a great job. He's super smart. He's super handsome. Like, you're going to love this guy, right? And then the guy comes in and she's like, oh, like you should meet my friend, blah, blah, blah. who has the most chance of ending up in a relationship with that girl? 100,000,000,000% it's the second guy. Why? Because there's a third party source endorsing that person. And you might tell me, hey, Emmanuel, this is silly. It's just about like some dating thing. The truth is humans are humans. Human psychology is what it is. And from a consumer perspective, it works the exact same way. If there's a third party entity that endorses your brand, it looks better than yourself endorsing yourself, which is actually kind of try hard and annoying, right? Like think about, again, that guy saying how handsome and cool he is, right? It's kind of try hard, it's kind of annoying. It's just like, this is why, for example, Apple doesn't say like, we're great, because there's already so many people saying they're great. And you can create that same effect by following the strategy that I kind of outlined here.
Yeah, actually, another good way to get advertorials is working with influencers, right? So we've done this with a few brands where we were basically telling people, hey, here's the product, give it a review, please mention this stuff, make it honest compared to some other products, right? We actually found that the advertorials were working the best when the influencer mentioned another product in the review as well, because that makes it the most genuine, right? They're not just comparing your product, but that they actually benchmark it against something else.
That's actually like a really interesting thing. I would actually love to test that out on native. I actually haven't tested that, but I can potentially see it doing well, where like you're like, oh, like there's this other one we tried, but like this one's actually better. That could be pretty cool, actually. I like that idea a lot. So yeah, this is kind of like what we're looking at. Then at the end, so just to kind of like conclude the example, at the end you just have a link, right? And then you click on the link, and then this is where you actually buy the product. Right, and then, they were just leading me to the order page. This is kind of like an intermediate, interstitial, as we call it, page. And that's the funnel, basically. So I would say, so what I just showed you here, obviously it's for one specific product. This kind of like way of doing native ads, I would say about 95% of what works on native is something along those lines. It's a very interesting clickbait ad, which again, when I say clickbait, it has a negative connotation. It's just an ad that's designed to get people's attention, right? Like at the end of the day, every marketer is in the clickbait business, whether they admit it or not, because their goal is to get clicks at the most efficient rate and to get sales at the most efficient cost. So you have an ad designed to get people to click. When they click on it, they go to an advertorial. Again, don't try to do anything other than advertorial, right? Like there's hundreds of marketers who have figured this out, and like I was among we're basically like a group. There's like a group of marketers who started out right around 2016. Internationally, in the US it was around 2014. Internationally it was around 2016. We're a group of maybe like 10 to 20 guys who we've basically figured it out. You know what? We've been doing it for years. This is all we've been doing. We started out early, so we had a great advantage, and we just cracked the code. You know what I mean? Like there's just there's no other way of doing things on native. Because I see it every day, right? I see people getting in, trying to be creative, trying to reinvent the wheel, and it just never works for them. So that's kind of how you're supposed to do it. Now I see the button. Fantastic.
Awesome, amazing. A few questions about the native as a platform. So what's the compensation model of native like? Are you paying per clicks? Are you paying per conversions?
So the way it works is you basically have CPC only for. Okay, let's not talk about the exceptions. Let's just talk about like the main things. So Taboola and Outbrain, you works on CPC. There's some other networks where you can do programmatic buying, where you can do CPM, but CPC is way better. And actually what's great right now, I would say especially about Taboola, is they have an amazing algorithm. They've developed over the years a feature called Smart Bid. And what Smart Bid does is it optimizes your auctions in a way that basically the best way I can put it is, imagine you bid 40 cents per click, for example. And on the specific placement, And how do you explain this without being too technical? Basically, you always pay you're charged on a CPC basis, but it always ends up creating a CPM, right? Because your CPM depends on your CTR and your CPC. So essentially, what this smart bid does is, let's say in one auction you're bidding, let's say $1 CPM, and then the next second guy is bidding 80 cents CPM. What SmartBid's going to do is it's only going to bid 81 cents. It's going to save you like 19 cents in that auction, so that you're still winning. You're still going to be number one, but you're saving 19 cents CPM, which by the way is like 20%. And so they do a great job at that. So that's the first great thing. The second great thing is, so a lot of people know that Facebook is great because it uses what's called pixel data. So pixel data is, most people probably know what it is, but as you get more and more purchases in a specific Facebook account with a specific pixel, Facebook learns what kind of people buy your products, which is why with a very old account, you can just launch a campaign without any targeting and be profitable. Now, what happens on native is that data is not restricted to your account. So what the algorithm does, and this is both Taboola and Outbrain, is when you launch an ad, if that image or if that headline has already ran before, the algorithm is going to take that into account when it decides what to show or not to show. Which is why, for example, if you submit 10 ads, typically one of them right off the bat is going to get all the traction. And the reason why is because the algorithm knows this ad or an ad that is similar to this one has already ran for a product like this, and we know it did well, so we're going to put it right at the top. And this is why it's so powerful. And just as an experiment, I've actually tried before buying on programmatic. Programmatic is when you don't use Taboola directly, but you go through a third-party company to buy on a CPM basis, basically like buying impressions. And I've tried to run Taboola and Outbrain on CPM basis just as an experiment to see, you know what, maybe it's going to work better. And working directly with Taboola and Outbrain just murders the performance of any other kind of like network you could buy it from. And the reason why is because their algorithms are just absolutely insane right now. They just know everything that's going to work for you, and they already know it. And unlike Facebook, like you don't have to wait until you have like tons of purchases, right? And now this leads us also to like what's the connection between native and Facebook, or Google for that matter as well. Well, on native, you can get tons of sales relatively quickly if you have the right product market fit. And then you put your fixed Facebook pixel on that page, and then you use that native data to feed your Facebook pixel, and vice versa, right? Because you can also have your Facebook data, your Facebook buyers feed data to native that you can use for like lookalikes and things like that. So it's very linked, and it's very well connected together.
So it sounds like it's a good idea to install the Taboola pixel a few weeks in advance before you start running the ads, right?
Yesterday, if not yesterday, today.
Sounds good. We just got a question from Julius. What CPAs are you getting on your campaigns? Is that a question you want to answer?
It's kind of like a very wide question, but I can't give a number because it depends on the product, right? Like if it's $1,000 product, if it's $1,000 product and then tell you $500, that's a good CPA, right? But if it's a $50 product and it's a $500 CPA, then it's not a good CPA. But what I will tell you is this. I think the question that hides underneath that question is, what kind of returns do we see on native? I think that's more so like the question. And my answer to that is it's a little bit different than Facebook. So on Facebook, my experience that I've seen is you're going to get more campaigns that can have very high ROIs at lower scale. That on native doesn't really happen. Like the ROI of a campaign is always the same. So on Facebook, for example, you can have a campaign spending $100 a day and making like 1,000, right? But the thing is when you scale, if you start spending 5K per day, you're not going to be making 50K per day. You're going to be making like 10K per day. Now native, what happens is, again, scale is built into your campaign. So what that means is you have a campaign, typically it's going to spend 100, it's going to make back 200. And then if you scale it, let's say you uncap it and start spending 3K per day, you're going to be making 6K. And if you can spend more, if you spend 6K, you're going to make 12K. There's no, like literally, there is very little, if no change when you scale a campaign. So my experience of what works best is typically it's that 75 to 100% ROI range. Nowadays, maybe even 50, 75% ROI. So if you guys don't know, like I'm actually one of the biggest haters of the ROAS metric. Like I think the ROAS metric is basically a scam, because basically what ROAS means is it's like spend and then you have your revenue. But the thing is you also have cost within that. And ROAS doesn't take into account the cost. So I've never really understood why people like ROAS. I use ROI. ROI, return on investment, is basically you have your ad spend, and then you have your profit and then profit minus divided by ad spend, and that's like how you calculate your ROI. And you do it on a 0 to 100% basis, right? So for example, if you spend $1 and you make $2 in profit, meaning basically, for example, let's say you spend $1 and then you get $3 in revenue, and then you have $1 of cost. Your gross profit is $2, and your net profit minus the ad cost will be $1. So that's 100% ROI. If you spend $1 and you make back $2 in gross profit, your net profit is $1. That's 100% ROI. That's the metric that I use. And basically the reason why that's great is because 50% ROI, if you can do it at scale, I mean, I don't have to like teach you guys math. If you spend 10K per day, you make $15,000 per day in gross profits minus your ad spend, you're making 5K per day in profit, right? And now if I'm working with a brand and all they care about is customer acquisition, what we can do at that point is we can go crazy and we can basically say, we don't even want to be profitable today, because we know that these customers a few months from now are going to bring us a lot more business. And what I do in that case, that's always my favorite phase, is just boost up the CPCs, go wild, and then you can get into 20, 30K per day in spends, and you're breaking even, but you have crazy volume. Like imagine like just one traffic source, you're adding $1 million a month in revenue. Like that's the kind of scale that is actually possible on native, assuming that obviously you can have the cash flow and you don't have to spend 30K per day, obviously.
Yeah, good one. Really interesting. And I think a lot of people also don't take into account their profit per sale when they're running promotions, right? So they're like, yeah, great, I'm getting this crazy ROAS. Well, in reality, you're making a lower profit. Another question. So we talked briefly about the verticals that may be suitable for native. What about price points? Is there any kind of relationship between?
Yes, very much. My general rule of thumb that I tell people is anything over, obviously, like usually some products are going to have like 1, 3, or 6 units. I'm talking about the price for just one unit. If your price for one unit, let me think. I've never seen, if your price per one unit of your product is over $150, native's probably not good for you. It depends, right? Maybe like $200. Actually, funny enough, I think I'm the only guy that I can think of. I ran an offer for a while that was $197, and they did really well on native. I think that's like the highest that I've seen. Obviously, for example, there's some supplement companies, like one unit of their product is going to be like $60. But then you can always order 6 for like 200, right? But that's a little bit different because you're ordering multiple units. However, what I will say is the upsells are very important on native. So typically you can increase your order value by like 30 to like 60% just by using upsells on native. But yeah, and then in terms of the lower price range, I would say it depends, but under $15 it gets hard. So anywhere from like 15 to 200 per unit, I think, is a good range.
We got also another question. What about Legion offers? And can you sell coaching offers?
And it does super well. Legion on native, it's perfect. So one thing that I will mention as well that I should have mentioned earlier, actually, but there is typically a slightly older age group that is on native, just because these news websites attract an older crowd. So if you have a product that is like 35 plus, 40 plus, it's perfect. But again, if you have a product, it's kind of like more of like a trendy thing for people in their 20s, native is probably not going to do great. And then, sorry, what were you asking?
Yeah, that was pretty much the lead gen. The lead
Oh
gen.
yeah, so lead generation. So lead generation is one of the best verticals on native. Again, there's three things that do really well on native all the time. At any given time, you're always going to see it run, right? There's like health offers, there's e-commerce offers, and then there's lead gen. And if you want like an order of what does well, health is always number one. However, health is also very regulated. So there's actually not that many health offers running because it's basically impossible to get it approved right now. And then second tied is like eCom and lead gen. And those two are tied. And this is why you see them running the most at any given time on the network, because that's just what tends to get approved, right? Because there's no regulatory issues. Now, let's get specific about lead gen, what tends to do well. Solar, any real offer related to solar does super well. Life insurance, car insurance, Medicare in the US, or like health insurance does well. I know there's like services for like will writing that do really well. So anything related to that for lead gen is going to do well. Again, comes back to the question, how many people can this help, right? If you have a super like niche thing, like for example, legal insurance for business owners, that's not going to do well because it's too niche.
We also got a question. What about retargeting? Is native a good platform for retargeting?
So this is something that I get asked quite a lot. So I know, again, talking about that like initial group of people who kind of like pioneered the whole native thing that works right now. I know some that really like retargeting. My personal experience with retargeting is it's not great unless you have a massive amount of traffic. So there's a couple of times where retargeting has worked well for me. But it was a few specific campaigns where I was getting crazy amounts of traffic. I mean, we're talking about like 200,000 visitors per day, right? And then retargeting was doing well. And the reason why is because the algorithm of Taboola and Outbrain are designed to work on huge numbers of people. And basically, when you get into retargeting, you're essentially restricting the pool in that specific campaign, right? So you think about your retargeting campaign. Let's say you've had like 2 million visitors over the last like 12, even just 12 months, right? Well, you're restricting the algorithm to that pool of 2 million people. And so it's not going to be super effective at finding buyers within that pool or people who are likely to buy at least. So I would say, do it, try it out. My answer is always you should try it out, except like not running an advertorial, you should not try it out, but retargeting, you should try it out. However, don't get your hopes up. Most of my success on native has come from campaigns that were run on the entire network. And also the other thing, like if I can avoid you like getting scammed in this call, a lot of people are going to talk about whitelist campaigns where you only run on specific websites that work well. Again, that sounds awesome in theory. In practice, all you're doing, you're restricting the algorithm. You're not using the full potential of that just amazing algorithm that these networks have created.
Mm-hmm. Also, another question we got was that what's the minimum spend on Taboola? I think I've heard that there was.
Very good question. So what I always tell people is, if you can't like at least $5,000 to get on any of these two networks, right? Like if you're not comfortable putting in like $5,000 for one of these ad networks, it's probably not right for you. It doesn't mean I'm not saying you're going to lose $5,000, right? Like the most likely scenario, if things go really wrong,
That's just to clarify, that's total, that's not per day, right?
No, it's $2 just to get started, right? For the testing. Ideally, you get to the point where it's per day and then you make $5K per day, right? But to get started, you would pay like $5K. It doesn't mean you're going to lose all of it. For the most part, if a campaign goes really wrong after like $1K in spend, like you're going to tell and you can just pause it. But just from like a mindset perspective, native, you have to do more testing. Again, as I said, it's harder to make something work, right? On Facebook, it's not easy. Nothing's ever easy, right? But it's easier to make something work. And then the hard part is actually scaling that stuff and making it work on a wider audience. On native, the barrier to entry to make something work is much higher. But when you get it to work, you just uncap it and you just enjoy the money, right? So that's why I always say on native, you have to be willing to lose a little bit more. But again, this is also why there's very few people who run native consistently over the years, because it's very mentally hard, I would say. It's almost like playing poker, like playing poker, like in theory, like you know what to do, but in practice, like when your emotions come into play, like it's going to mess up your game. And native's the same way. A lot of it is just like mentality. Like sometimes you have to be able to go through like losses and then eventually just blows up, right? And that's also why like there's so many like people who offer native services, because if you don't know what you're doing, then yeah, it's going to be pretty difficult.
Yeah, awesome. Also, another question we just got was, what tools do you use to build sales funnels for native? But I think I've got a more important question. Is there an ideal structure for your advertorial? Are there certain kind of frameworks you can follow that are going to make you closer to?
There are. So, funny enough, this is one of those things where like it's almost like a separate topic, because it's pretty complex. I have a video where like I walk through people through an advertorial where like I show the exact structure. So I think we can probably like link that at the end or at some point. What I will say about advertorials is, the more you make it sound like a third party, the more it sounds like it's a review, the more it's something along those lines, the better it's going to do. And on the flip side, the more it sounds like you're boasting about your product, the more it sounds like you're the company selling your product and telling people how great you are, the less well it's going to do. But in general, otherwise, it's just pretty standard. It's like just good copywriting. That's basically what works, like one thing that I always tell people is you always want to match the level of your claim with the level of your proof. So if you're going to make very aggressive claims, you always have to have very aggressive proof to back it up. And if you make mild claims, then you don't need quite as much proof, right? So be mindful of like believability. Native audiences tend to be pretty skeptical, again, because there's been lots of offers that have ran over the years. So in general, you have to bring in lots of proofs, right? Like testimonials, ideally some endorsements if you have them. Some scientific studies and whatnot, all this kind of stuff tends to do super well.
Yeah, awesome. I just linked the video below this live stream. I just wanted to point out Emmanuel's copywriting skills. The title reads, "This forgotten sales funnel marketing strategy is responsible for over 50 million in sales." I love it. Sweet. What's the funniest product you've seen advertised on native?
Funniest product on native. Well, so this is the one thing you have to know is like native networks have evolved a lot over the years. So what's running nowadays, Taboola and Outbrain, it's like very premium networks. Like you can't really do whatever you want. Like you can't say whatever you want.
You've got Facebook and Wish ads as well. So
Wish ads. But so my point is, a couple of years back, actually when I got started in 2016, you could basically run pretty much whatever you wanted. And so there's definitely been some really funny ads that I've seen running for products related to, what's the nicest way that I can put it? Products for men that have problems getting it up. That's the nicest way that I can put it. And those ads tend to be hilarious, referring to the wives' reactions and just all kinds of like really funny stuff around that. And yeah, I'll let you guys imagine the rest.
Amazing. Yeah, it sounds like a very funny platform. It's a totally different world. I feel that. So if you were to name maybe the most important variables in the native ads equation, what would those be, just to kind of
For
sum it up?
success, right? So I would say I have a few that come to mind. I just want to put them in the right order. I will say this: your offer is number one. Your offer is number one. And by offer, I mean like your product and the way you position your product. It's number one because it determines how many people are potentially interested in what you have to sell. And it determines how unique your offering is, right? Like if you come in and you have something that can help a lot of people and it's never been sold before, you're going to do super well on native. It's like perfect for native. Some of my best campaigns are always when I introduce a new product that hasn't been seen before on native. So that's your first variable. Your second variable is your advertorial. The advertorial is just absolutely critical. Like a good advertorial is like the difference between making or breaking a campaign. And again, you can have a great offer, but without the right advertorial, it's not going to do as well. It's not going to do well at all. Sorry. And the main difference is the better your offer is, the less your advertorial has to be exceptional, basically. Third thing is your actual ads. So the ad is the combination between the headline and the image. Those are super important as well. That would be the third one. So that's more like in terms of like ranking the importance of different variables. In terms of what actually makes success for any given business individual, I would say number one is like mindset. Just on native, it can be brutal sometimes. Like especially like for me, because like I kind of know what's gonna work or not work. Sometimes I'm testing something, and like if you're down, like even for me, right? Like I've made tons of money, but you're in a campaign and you're down like $3,000 or $4,000, and you haven't really made anything back from that. Like it can be really discouraging. But at the end of the day, you just got to stick with what you know, stick to your principles, and eventually, more often than not, I'll just turn those things around, and eventually it becomes like extremely profitable campaigns that makes like 10 or 100 times more than that initial loss, right?
Awesome. We've got a few more questions I can see.
Yeah, Alex has some good questions actually.
Yeah, so what about competitor analyses? What's the best
Yeah,
place to find winners?
that's super important. I would say just in general, like this is valid for any ad network, by the way. I would say like if you want to start advertising on the network, you should see like you should always look at what's running. And you shouldn't necessarily copy it because it doesn't mean it's always optimal, or like you can probably do better most of the time, but just have a look at what's running. Just see what kind of products, what kind of ads, and you definitely have to do a good amount of research to see what's running and what's not. But at the same time, like I also know there's a lot of marketers, like they're not very innovative, and so they just get limited. They just look at what's working and they just try to like copy that. And those are never the guys that do the best, right? The guys that do the best, in my experience, and I try to be one of those guys, is you look at what's working and you take away principles from that, and then you use those principles to create your own successful campaigns.
Gotcha. Awesome.
And
also,
you're also asking like, do you need to do like gray hat stuff? No, like there's absolutely not. Like there's tons of people who run just super proper and they make tons of money.
yeah. And also, we mentioned in the event that we're going to talk about some of the most common mistakes that people make when running ads. Let's use that to wrap it up.
Absolutely. That's a great idea. So there's a lot. I'll start with some basic ones and I'll get into like more advanced ones. So some of the basic ones. Number one, the biggest one, not using an advertorial. Like I swear to God, like it's not that it's magic, but it's a little bit better, if not a lot better than everything else, and everyone uses it. So it's like, imagine you're like the one guy coming in and not doing something that's like the best proven solution. It's just not going to work for you. So you need an advertorial. Method number two is not being able to lose money to make money. I mean, this is not just native. That's just media buying. That's just human nature in general, right? Like no one likes losing money. It's a cognitive bias. We're a lot more affected by loss than by gain. Like you feel a lot worse by losing $1,000 than by making $1,000. It's been proven by dozens of clinical studies. But you just have to overcome that. Like to be successful native, it might take several $1,000s to make it work. If you've never done it before and you're doing it yourself without any guidance or whatsoever, like you can potentially lose like 10 or 20K, like pretty easily, just to figure out what works and what doesn't. That's just the truth, right? So that's where the value of like working with someone who's done it comes in, because then you don't waste all your money, right? Or if you lose money, you lose it for a purpose and you know why you're losing it. So now let's look at the flip side of that. On one hand, you have to be willing to lose money to make money. At the same time, what I always tell people is you have to know what you're buying, because you're always buying something, or you're not always buying something. But for example, for media buying, you're buying data. That should always be the mindset. If you're losing money because you're figuring out what works and what doesn't, testing advertorials, testing publishers, testing different creatives, that's fine. That's part of the process. But if you're just losing money because you're just spending more and more because you think at some point it's going to work and you have no framework, you don't have a strategy, then you're just wasting your time and your money. So you need a strategy. However, my point is, the mistake you should avoid is when you're at the part of that strategy where you're losing money, but you're not losing money, you're buying data, keep going. Like, don't get discouraged. So that's mistake number 2. Mistake number 3, again, really basic one, is just trying desperately to sell a product that has no point being on native in the first place. So again, if your product is for like a under 30 crowds, don't waste your time and your money. If your product is not suitable for relatively mass audience, at least 15% of the population, maybe like 10, let's say just 10% of the population, just don't waste your time. If your product is over $200, don't waste your time. If your product is under $15, don't waste your time, unless you sell multiple units or whatnot. But for the most part, yeah, that one's actually pretty big as well. Like, there's definitely brands that just like lose a lot of money. And obviously, I'm saying product. If lead generation, it can be less than $15, obviously. But that's the third big mistake that I see consistently. And then I will say this as well. Now let's get into some more advanced ones. Like, mistake number 4 that I see is having a working campaign and not optimizing it. The thing with native, it's great because it just runs and it keeps working. But in my experience, let's say you have a campaign spending $3K per day with, like, let's say 30% ROI. Like, if you actually know what you're doing and you optimize it properly with the right frameworks and you keep working on your advertorial, you keep working on your ads, you can easily get it to like 5 or 6K per day and spend at 75% ROI, right? There's always more you can squeeze out of your campaigns. Just don't be lazy and like put in the work, right? And that's kind of like a separate topic in and of itself, how to optimize a campaign, how to squeeze the most revenue and profits out of a campaign, but just don't be lazy is like the first sort of guideline. And then mistake number 5, because I want to have like 5 mistakes. I would say in general, it's just not testing enough. That is just the biggest thing that I see is people just kind of like launch a couple of ads, one advertorial, and they just think like, oh, like, it's going to work. The truth is you have to test lots of things. The more inexperienced you are, the more you have to test things. So be willing to test 5 to 10 advertorials, be willing to test dozens of ads, not all at the same time, because that's going to mess up your statistical significance. But over time, you should plan to be testing a lot of different things, right? Tested multiple.
This actually applies across ad networks, right?
Yeah,
so
yeah,
a lot of people just getting into Facebook ads and they're like, yeah, I'm going to test my audiences, but I can't be bothered testing a lot of creatives, right? And actually, probably that's the number one factor that separates, the top ad buyers from the rest of the population.
And one thing I'll say as well is test multiple countries if you can. Like, different countries can have completely different performance as well. Like, there's lots of times where I'll test something in the US, it doesn't work, but then if I test it in another geo, it's going to start crushing, and vice versa. So
how important it is to translate your ads in this case?
Oh, you should translate it for sure. Like, those people who are lazy and they just run English in other countries, like, for example, the ad we were seeing about like the Wi-Fi booster, what these guys are actually doing is they actually run an international campaign and then they just change the country name changes automatically. I'm not a fan of that. That's not my thing. I know some people do well with it, but I don't like it because I'm more like on the brand side of things, where like I run one product, one country, and if I want to expand, then I expand, but I run one campaign per thingy. However, for the most part, if you're going to do what I do, which I recommend, works for me, you should translate.
Awesome. Sounds good. I think like we've touched upon so many different topics, and there's so much more to explore. We've got, we know advertorials are important, but how to actually get them set up, it's a totally separate topic. Same with ads. I think like, especially if you're used to making Facebook ads, it's a totally different game, right? With those clickbaity kind of images. So that's really interesting. So I feel that if people want to know more about the topic, I know that you recently just launched your YouTube channel, but how else can people find out more about
what you do? Step, yes, check out my YouTube channel. I just posted the first video. There's going to be a lot more coming. Basically, The idea behind it is I just do like live analysis of me walking you through different products and funnels that work on native. There might even be some like Google display as well, some things related to that. So there's gonna be lots of like specific examples, right? It's not just gonna be like me blabbering about some theory. It's gonna be me walking you through what's actually working right now. Right now it's 2020. Maybe it's gonna, it's gonna be in the future as well. So that's the first place. Definitely check it out. The second place is if you want to connect with me, check out my LinkedIn, which has lots of information. I have an agency called Native Media, which helps businesses grow and scale using native ads. The purpose being avoiding all that potential money loss that I've talked about, like those 10, 20, 30, $40,000 you would have had to waste working with me. You just kind of like skip through that. Because like as one of the first guys who kind of like, basically I'm one of the first guys who started doing advertorials on native, and I'm kind of like introduced a lot of the products that are working right now. So you should definitely work with me if you're interested in that. And then for those who just kind of like want to follow my life in general, just check out my Instagram, Emmanuel F Officiel. Lots of cool stuff on there as well.
Especially naked photos.
Not naked, half naked.
Half naked, yeah, absolutely. Awesome, and thanks a lot for doing this. This was super awesome. I feel that native ads is something that we need to get educated more on as a company, especially as we're trying to scale silver clients to 10 figures.
Yeah, we have lots of cool partnerships coming up. I think, I think a lot of expanding on native then helps Facebook and vice versa. So it's a pretty cool sort of collab synergy.
Yeah, exactly. By the way, I wanted to ask you, do you find native working for beauty products?
Of course, if it's anti-aging. So
okay,
yeah,
so
if it's beauty for like just makeup, then no, makeup is not going to do well. But if it's like anti-aging, looking younger, it's great. It's a little bit tricky to get it approved. It is still possible to get it approved. You just have to know what you're doing and know what they're looking for.
Gotcha. Awesome. So thanks so much. Any kind of last remarks?
Yeah, last remarks. I would say don't be scared. Like you have to spend money to make money. And one of my favorite quotes that I discovered recently is doing business without advertising is like winking at a girl in the dark. So don't be that guy who winks at a girl in the dark. Advertise your products and scale your business.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, everybody, for being here. So many people today with us. That's super cool. Guys, so yeah, if you are not a part of the group already, please join us at e-commerce scaling strategies by Sales Genomics. It's our Facebook group, and we do those kind of webinars every single week. So yeah, stay tuned and get in touch with Emmanuel if you're interested in learning more about native ads. Have a good day, everybody. Thanks a lot for staying till the very end. This was e-commerce scaling strategies by Sales Genomics, brought to you by Matt from Sales Genomics. If you're interested in more tips and strategies on how to scale your e-commerce business, visit our Facebook group called e-commerce scaling strategies by Sales Genomics, or follow us on social media.